Before we begin, take a slow breath. Let your mind settle and allow this gentle story from the ancient world to guide you into a calm and peaceful night. Tonight, we travel back in time, not with excitement, but with silence. Not to learn quickly, but to listen softly. This is Dreamo History, your calm companion for sleep, relaxation, and peaceful storytelling. Every civilization is founded upon an origin story, a foundational narrative that justifies the present order by detailing the necessary violence that defeated the past. For the young American Republic, the story began with rebellion against distant tyranny and the struggle to establish justice. But 4,000 years earlier, the Greeks chronicled an even grander revolution, one that established the very concept of order in the cosmos. The rise of Zeus against the suffocating reign of his father, the Titan Cronus. This ancient myth is the ultimate template for the overthrow of a government that has ceased to serve its people. A government that literally turns inward to devour its own future. The age of Cronus was a stagnant, terrible tranquility, a period of power maintained through existential dread. Cronus himself was a revolutionary, having overthrown his own father, the primal sky, Uranus. But where he might have installed a just order, he inherited and magnified his father's paranoia. Cronus was forewarned by a prophecy, the curse of his mutilated father, that one of his own children, like himself, was destined to cast him down. This fear did not lead him to seek wisdom or to earn the loyalty of his offspring. It plunged him into an abyss of self-preservation. His solution was monstrously simple and politically final. As each child was born to his wife and sister, Rhea, he would swallow them whole. Imagine the horror on Mount Othrys, the grim seat of the Titan's power. As each infant, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon emerged, moments of fleeting joy were instantly crushed by the terrible spectacle of the father absorbing his progeny. This was tyranny in its most chilling form. A government that, due to fear, consumes its own citizens, eliminating the future to secure the present. The Titan's belly became a living prison, a silent, dark dimension where the seeds of the new world were held captive by the anxiety of the old. This act speaks directly to a core American fear, that power, unchecked, will inevitably become corrupt and self-serving, destroying the very people it is meant to protect. Rhea, the Earth Mother, endured this horror 5 times, her grief eventually hardening into resolve. She saw not only the destruction of her family, but the perpetual subjugation of the universe under her husband's crushing fear. She sought refuge and counsel from her mother, Gaia, the Earth, who embodied the original spirit of the world. With Gaia's assistance, Rhea devised a trick that would save the 6th and last son. When the child was born, Rhea swaddled a stone in clothes, indistinguishable from a newborn baby, and presented it to Cronus. The blind, paranoid Titan, confident in the finality of his solution, swallowed the stone without hesitation. The fate of the universe rested on the success of a simple, desperate deception. The true infant, Zeus, was spirited away to the hidden valleys of Crete, the rugged, fertile island far from the cold gaze of Othrys. His childhood was an exercise in radical secrecy. He was raised in a cave on Mount Ida, nursed by the goat Amalthea, whose horn would eventually become the cornucopia, the symbol of endless plenty. His cries were masked by the crashing shields and spears of the Kuretes, young warrior priests who performed a frantic, noisy dance to prevent Cronus' spies from hearing the sound of the future king of the gods. This period of hidden nurturing is vital to the heroic narrative. Zeus was not raised in the poisonous palace of his father. He was fostered in the raw, untamed heart of the earth. He grew up knowing the true price of liberty, free from the insidious corruption of Cronus' reign. He was, in effect, the revolutionary leader raised in exile, patiently awaiting the moment to return and fulfill his destiny. The American narrative is fond of the return of the native son, the hero who rises from humble or hidden beginnings to confront the established, arrogant power. When Zeus finally reached manhood, he did not storm Othrys. He returned with the subtlety of a serpent, infiltrating his father's court disguised as a cupbearer. His first act of revolution was not battle, but pharmacy. He prepared a powerful emetic, a draught of wine and mustard, and convinced Cronus to drink it. The potion, perhaps mixed with the venom of fear that had plagued Cronus' soul for so long, had its desired, agonizing effect. The Titan was violently forced to disgorge everything he had consumed. First came the stone, proving Rhea's long-ago deception. Then, in reverse order of consumption, came the 5 siblings of Zeus: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. They emerged fully grown, immortal, and ablaze with fury at the lost decades of their existence. This moment was the true genesis of the Olympian pantheon. Zeus had not just saved his family, he had resurrected the new world order from the belly of the old. The age of consumption was over, replaced by the immediate, terrifying reality of necessary, righteous revolution. The stage was set for the decade-long war, the Titanomachy, that would determine whether the cosmos would be governed by ancient, fearful tyranny or by a new, powerful, and dangerously flawed commitment to order. This section will detail the cosmic war that cemented Zeus's power, framing it as the violent, necessary process of establishing a new, legitimate government. 2. The Titanomachy and the Forge of Sovereignty. The sudden, violent re-emergence of the 5 captive Olympians from Cronus' belly immediately ignited the great conflict that would reshape the cosmos, the Titanomachy. This was not merely a family feud. It was the world's first and most devastating ideological war, fought to determine whether the universe would be ruled by the primordial, untamed power of the elder generation, the Titans, or the strategic, organized force of the younger gods, the Olympians. For 10 relentless years, the conflict raged, a cataclysmic struggle that tore apart the fabric of the earth, providing the mythical foundation for the Western concept that a new, just order can only be forged in the crucible of revolution. The battle lines were drawn with absolute clarity. The Titans, led by Cronus, held Mount Othrys, relying on brute, ancient strength and an intimidating grasp of primal forces. The Olympians, led by Zeus, stood defiantly on Mount Olympus, a towering bastion that would forever become synonymous with their reign. Zeus understood immediately that brute strength alone, even buttressed by the fury of his rescued siblings, would not be enough to dismantle the established order. Like any shrewd military commander or revolutionary leader, he knew he had to forge powerful strategic alliances. His first move was a descent into the deepest recesses of the earth, into Tartarus, the subterranean abyss where Cronus had long ago imprisoned his terrifying half-siblings. the Cyclopes, and the Hecatonchires. The Cyclopes, three one-eyed giants, were master smiths whose hands held the secrets of celestial fire and metalwork. In gratitude for their release, they gifted the Olympians with their revolutionary tools of power. To Hades, they gave the Helm of Darkness, granting invisibility. To Poseidon, the mighty trident, capable of summoning storms and earthquakes. And to Zeus, they forged his ultimate weapon, the thunderbolt. The thunderbolt was more than a weapon. It was the physical manifestation of Zeus's sovereignty. It was the lightning-fast, definitive judgment that instantly rendered the Titans' slow geological power obsolete. It represented the decisive, focused authority of the new executive, a mandate written in celestial fire. The Cyclops Forge became the mythical parallel to the innovation and strategic advantage needed to win a revolution against a better armed, entrenched enemy. Meanwhile, the Hecatonchires, three giants, each with 50 heads and 100 hands, offered invaluable, unwavering physical support, their 100 hands throwing mountainsides at the Titans with impossible speed. The tide of the Titanomachy turned into a terrifying crescendo. Zeus no longer relied on guile. He unleashed the full fury of his new authority. He stood atop Olympus, not as a leader, but as an elemental force. The air was split by the continuous roar of the thunderbolt. The earth convulsed under the Titans' desperate counterattacks. Homer recounts the scene with seismic grandeur. The sea boiled, the sky groaned, and the world seemed ready to shatter into its original chaos. It was the ultimate demonstration that the new gods possessed the sheer, focused force needed to not only fight the old power, but utterly subjugate it. Finally, marshalling the combined forces of the thunderbolt, the trident, and the unending barrage from the 100-handed giants, Zeus delivered the final crushing blow. The Titans were overwhelmed, their power shattered not by slow erosion, but by instant, decisive force. Zeus and his allies bound the defeated Titans in unbreakable chains forged by the Cyclopes and cast them down into the deepest pit of Tartarus, a prison sealed with bronze gates. This act was crucial. The establishment of the new order required the total and visible containment of chaos. Zeus had demonstrated that he was not merely strong enough to rule, but strong enough to enforce permanent cosmic law. With the Titans defeated, the Olympians established their undisputed control. But who would lead them? The three main brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, did not simply assume power. They settled the matter through a primitive yet powerful act of justice, drawing lots. This legendary moment, often overlooked, is the mythological blueprint for the peaceful, legal division of authority. They did not fight among themselves after the victory. They submitted to chance. Zeus won the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. While Zeus was designated the supreme ruler, he was not an absolute monarch. He was the first among equals, primus inter pares, constrained by the shared agreement and the power of his brothers. The Titanomachy was thus the necessary, violent preamble to the Olympian age. It forged the sovereignty of Zeus, providing him with the weapons, the allies, and the unchallengeable right to rule based on merit and revolutionary success. The thunderbolt became the eternal symbol that his authority was earned, not inherited, and that the new order, though born of fire, was fundamentally committed to the organization of law and the ultimate defeat of primal anarchy. Zeus had established the throne, but the true test, the burden of governance was only just beginning on the glittering heights of Mount Olympus. The smoke of the Titanomachy had cleared, and the eternal light of the sky now fell upon the gold-paved halls of Mount Olympus. Zeus had secured his revolution, yet the true challenge of leadership lay not in conquering enemies, but in managing allies and upholding the very principles of order he had fought to establish. The thunderbolt in his hand was the ultimate weapon, but on the throne it was his wisdom, or lack thereof, that determined his success. Zeus now faced the supreme paradox of power. To be the law, he had to be unwavering, yet to rule the volatile Olympians, he had to be political, flawed, and deeply, tragically human. The Olympian court was the universe's first political cabinet, a council of immense power, terrifying jealousy, and perpetual disagreement. It was a constant source of friction that demanded every ounce of Zeus's diplomatic and coercive skill. Chief among his troubles was his queen, Hera. Their marriage was a political cornerstone, necessary to legitimize his new regime by uniting the sky with the laws of marriage and family. Yet, it was a union poisoned by Zeus's insatiable appetite for mortal and immortal partners, a fatal flaw that translated personal infidelity into cosmic instability. Hera, the goddess of righteous fury, transformed herself into the ultimate political rival. Her relentless pursuit of Zeus's paramours and their offspring, serving as a constant, potent check on his absolute power. Her anger reminded the cosmos that even the supreme ruler was accountable, at least to his own volatile family. Beyond his queen, Zeus wrestled with his powerful siblings. Poseidon, bitter over losing the sky, often shook the earth with his trident in acts of pique that required Zeus's immediate calming attention. The younger gods, too, posed challenges. Ares, the god of raw destructive war, needed constant management lest his passions consume civilized life. While Apollo and Athena, representing intellect and strategic wisdom, often competed for their father's ear. Zeus was compelled to be a perpetual mediator, settling disputes between Ares and Athena over war, or between Apollo and Hermes over invention. Olympus was less a harmonious paradise and more a high-stakes, eternally dysfunctional bureaucracy, forcing Zeus to govern through constant negotiation and the occasional stern deployment of his lightning bolt to remind the council who held the ultimate authority. But Zeus's most profound and enduring contribution was his role as the lawgiver. To the Greeks, his authority was defined by his administration of three sacred concepts that underpinned their social contract: justice, Dike, and Themis. Zeus was the ultimate judge, presiding over the moral order of the universe. He was associated with Dike, justice, and Themis, divine law, punishing those who committed hubris, that fatal arrogance which defied the limits set by the gods. Figures who indulged in hubris, such as Salmoneus or Tantalus, received punishments so extreme they became eternal warnings. Zeus made it clear the new order was not just about power, but about the enforcement of moral humility and the necessity of boundaries. Oaths, Horkios. In a world without complex legal systems, the spoken oath was the bedrock of societal trust. Zeus was Horkios, the guarantor of oaths sworn between mortals and even between gods, often sworn on the river Styx. Breaking a sacred vow was a direct and unforgivable insult to the king of the gods, instantly earning the swift judgment of the thunderbolt. This was not mere politeness. It was a religious duty demanding that a host must offer protection and succor to a stranger, and a guest must respect his host's property and family. Zeus often descended to Earth in disguise, Zeus Xenios, to test the mortals' adherence to this law. By placing the supreme authority's protection over the traveler and the stranger, Zeus ensured social stability and mobility, making the concept of universal respect a divine mandate. The story of Zeus's reign is thus a critical historical document on the burdens of leadership. He was tasked with being the ultimate impartial judge, yet his personal passions constantly threatened to undermine his divine impartiality. He had to be a terrifying warrior to win the throne, yet a cunning statesman to keep it. The dramas that unfolded on Olympus, the power struggles, the jealousies, the constant demands for favors, demonstrated to the Greeks that even the most powerful government is, at its core, a reflection of the complicated, flawed nature of its administrators. Zeus's throne was not a static chair of serenity, but a hot seat of endless political and moral responsibility, establishing the principle that the maintenance of cosmic and societal order is a dynamic, daily, and often deeply painful struggle. The greatest challenge facing the newly established Olympian order was not merely governing the gods, but governing the rapidly expanding, often chaotic realm of mortals below. Zeus had mastered the cosmos, but Earth remained a volatile landscape populated by monsters, tyrants, and men prone to hubris. To administer his will and implement justice without constantly descending with destructive force, Zeus required intermediaries. These were the heroes, the demigods, the agents of heaven, who served as the physical embodiment of Olympian law and aspiration in the mortal sphere. The vast majority of these legendary figures, including Heracles, Perseus, Minos, and Helen of Troy, were the direct offspring of Zeus. While his numerous liaisons with mortal women were a ceaseless source of political torment for Hera, they were philosophically essential for the world order. These unions were not just acts of passion. They were strategic infusions of divine energy into the human lineage, ensuring that humanity possessed the necessary strength, intelligence, and divine favor to evolve beyond savagery. Zeus was deliberately injecting heroism and civilization into the world. The heroes, therefore, acted as Zeus's paramilitary force and cultural ambassadors. Heracles, the most famous of Zeus's sons, provides the clearest example of this divine mandate. Though tormented by Hera, Heracles' legendary 12 labors, defeating monsters like the Nemean lion and the Lernaean hydra, were not just feats of strength. They were acts of mythological public service. He cleared the earth of dangerous, primeval threats that the gods themselves might deem beneath their direct attention. Heracles effectively made the mortal world safe for the rise of civilization, paving the way for agriculture, trade, and the formation of city-states. He was the divine enforcer who brought the dike, justice of Olympus, to bear on the physical landscape. This concept resonates deeply with the American experience. The idea of the exceptional individual, the chosen figure, blessed with immense power and a moral duty, is central to the narrative of founding fathers and pioneers who tame a wilderness and establish a new world order. The heroes were the original pioneers, embodying the relentless drive and self-sacrifice required to bring enlightenment to the frontier, mirroring the idea of manifest destiny, but framed by divine obligation rather than political entitlement. Furthermore, Zeus employed heroes to establish and codify just societal structures. His son Minos, king of Crete, was famously revered as the wisest lawgiver. Minos would periodically ascend to a mountain cave to consult directly with Zeus, bringing back the laws and precepts dictated by the supreme god. This mythical relationship established a crucial link between divine authority and human legislation. The best human laws are derived from the rational, ordered will of heaven. This provided the intellectual justification for justice systems across the ancient world and formed the philosophical basis for the later Western concept of natural law. The idea that certain rights and laws are inherent and universally dictated by a higher power, not merely by human decree. Yet, this system of divine intervention was not without its profound ambiguities. Zeus was the ultimate fate weaver, often dictating not just the rise of heroes, but the fall of nations. The most famous example is the Trojan War. While sparked by the choices of mortals and lesser gods, the war was arguably set in motion by Zeus's decision to thin the overpopulated world and test the strength and limits of his favored heroes. The great saga of the Iliad shows Zeus constantly weighing the scales of fate, deciding which hero's time has come and which army deserves temporary favor. He is shown not as an impartial umpire, but as a dynamic, complex administrator of destiny whose actions, though seemingly capricious, ultimately serve the long-term mysterious goal of maintaining cosmic balance. In the end, the myth of the heroes served as a profound reassurance and a warning to mortals. It reassured them that the king of the gods cared enough about their fate to intervene directly, offering a path to glory and civilization. But it also warned them that the slightest act of hubris could incur divine wrath, and that their greatest achievements were ultimately contingent on the will and whims of the volatile powers on Mount Olympus. Through his agents, the heroes, Zeus bridged the ontological gap, cementing his authority not just in the sky, but in the legends, laws, and foundational wars of the mortal world. He proved that true sovereignty must be projected and enforced, not merely decreed. The thunder of Zeus may have receded from the altars of faith, and the marble city of Olympus may exist only in the realm of myth. Yet the profound principles of governance, justice, and power established by the Olympian age are not mere history. They are the invisible architecture of the American Republic. When the Founding Fathers sought to create a new government, a complete break from the monarchical dynastic tyrannies of Europe, they deliberately turned to classical antiquity. They sought not the Christianity of the medieval kings, but the rational republican ideals of Athens and Rome, thereby adopting the profound lessons and symbolic language first codified by the gods on Mount Olympus. The most visible, striking testament to this adoption is found in the physical embodiment of American power, neoclassical architecture. The American political vision required structures that projected stability, permanence, and rational authority, qualities inherently absent in the temporary, ornate, or highly personal palaces of monarchy. The solution was the language of the classical temple. The U.S. Capitol building, the Supreme Court, the Lincoln Memorial, and countless state houses are adorned with columns, pediments, and domes that are direct descendants of the Parthenon and the monumental Temple of Zeus at Olympia. This was a deliberate ideological choice. By clothing their government in the mantle of classicism, the founders were making a silent but powerful declaration. American law and justice were not based on the whims of a king, but on the eternal, rational and objective principles symbolized by the Greek pursuit of dike, justice, and themis, law. Principles first enforced by Zeus himself. The very stones of Washington, D.C. are a permanent neoclassical echo designed to imbue the government with the mythical authority of the Olympian court, establishing the ideal that justice must be pursued under the sign of timeless order. Furthermore, the core political philosophy of the Republic mirrors the essential struggle Zeus faced, the necessity of balancing immense power with accountability. The American system, with its separation of powers into three branches, is an earthly articulation of the original tripartite division of the cosmos among Zeus, sky executive, Poseidon, sea turbulent forces, and Hades, underworld containment. This initial division on Olympus was the first mythical attempt to constrain absolute authority, ensuring that no single deity could wield total, unchecked power. The founders, deeply suspicious of concentrated power, like that of the Titans or a capricious Zeus, codified this mythological check and balance system into their constitution. The symbolism of Zeus permeates the national consciousness through his most loyal companion, the eagle. The eagle was Zeus's personal messenger, his scepter-bearer, and the swift, terrifying agent of his will, capable of striking from the celestial heights. Adopted by the Roman Jupiter and later by the United States, the bald eagle became the nation's official emblem. It is depicted on the Great Seal, clutching the olive branch of peace and the arrows of war, a direct parallel to Zeus's dual nature as both the protector of Pax, peace, and the wielder of the thunderbolt. The eagle symbolizes strength, sovereignty, and the power to defend the celestial realm, the Republic, from external and internal threats, a timeless inheritance from the divine king. Finally, the enduring legacy of Zeus in the American psyche lies in the continued relevance of his moral dilemmas. The myth of Zeus and Olympus is a perpetual masterclass in the politics of human and divine, flaw and virtue. It teaches that the pursuit of a perfect, ordered state is an eternal struggle. Zeus was the ultimate lawgiver, yet his personal passions and infidelities repeatedly threatened the stability of his own regime. The narrative serves as a constant, complex warning. Even the most powerful government, established by revolutionary ideals, is ultimately administered by individuals prone to hubris, error, and personal drama. The Greek myths provide the archetypes for the flawed leader, the vengeful spouse, Hera, the rebellious minister, Poseidon, and the perpetual struggle for dike. The story of Zeus and Olympus is thus the origin story of Western political consciousness. It is a powerful historical and philosophical framework that defines the necessity of revolution, the danger of tyranny, the centrality of law, and the unavoidable corruption of absolute power. As Americans gaze upon the neoclassical columns of their government buildings and the stern profile of the eagle, they are unknowingly recognizing the eternal, enduring echo of Olympus, the original mountain of power where the chaotic forces of the world were first brought under the dominion of thunder and law. The thunder has quieted, but the mandate of justice forged on that mountain continues to define the very meaning of the Republic.